sodium through sweating, vomiting, diarrhea, and excessive urination. Result, what happened when you have too little sodium? Okay, the interstitial fluid is hypotonic. Okay, so the water enters the cells, which swell. Okay, causes death and brain damage. Again, if you don't have too little salt to maintain the salt on the outside of the cell, it's going to draw it inside, because inside of the cell now is too salty. Okay, it's going to draw in, it's going to swell and expand, and some cell death, and here in this case you might have brain damage. Hypernatremia, too much salt. Okay, then you have water loss. Sometimes you have ADH insufficiency, and can gain sodium through imbalance of aldosterone as well. Potassium. Okay, potassium is the major intracellular cation. So again, it is inside the cells. Okay, mainly for neuroexcitability, secreted by the kidney due to aldosterones. You guys remember when we did the kidneys? Okay, when sodium is absorbed, potassium is secreted. Okay, hypokalemia is too little potassium. Okay, you might have a loss of potassium due to not enough intake, vomiting, diarrhea, and alkalosis. We're going to talk about that later on in the chapter. Sometimes it redistributes when diabetes or uses insulin. When glucose moves in, potassium does too. Hyperkalemia, when you have too much, okay, because you might have a renal disease. Remember, I talked about earlier, when sodium is absorbed, potassium is excreted. Renal disease, aldosterone insufficiency, lead to problem with nerve and muscle and heart, inability to repolarize. Okay, remember, sodium potassium is very important for the action potential. Okay, so that was potassium. So sodium and potassium, both of them were cations, which means they are positive. Okay, now we're going to the extracellular anions, okay, which are negative ions. Okay, negative, they have a negative charge. Okay, chloride and bicarbonate. So it is the main extracellular anion. Okay, they really follow sodium and maintain osmotic pressure. Hypochloremia can be due to cystic fibrosis. Okay, bicarbonate is an important buffer in the blood. I think we talked about that earlier. Will maintain acid-base balance in the blood. Yeah, I think we saw this already when we did the blood buffering. So, where was it? Yes, when you have cystic fibrosis, you have when you test the sweat, you have 2 to 5 times more chloride. Okay, and that's one of the way people can test it. And then you have of course, it is a genetic problems. I don't know if you want to know anybody with cystic fibrosis. You have a lot of breathing problem, respiratory infection, lung infection, things like that. Building up of mucus in the organs. Yeah. Calcium and phosphate. Calcium and phosphate. Calcium absorbed via the intestines, assisted by vitamin D. We saw this in the digestive chapter, I think. Necessary for muscle contraction. Okay, remember, without it, the muscle will not contract. Okay. Hypokalemia and hyper, too little and too much. Okay. Generally due to parathyroid gland. You guys remember the parathyroid hormone, okay? And then calcitonin and all that, okay? And then for osteoclast, okay? Phosphate is found with calcium in the bone and teeth, also in the phospholipid, ATP, okay, nucleotides, and buffer. This phosphate is a buffer, okay. Hypophosphatemia, okay, too little, okay. When you have too much antacid, sometimes it will cause hypo, okay, alcohol withdrawal as well. Hyper, when there's a renal problem, and excessive cell destruction. And remember, you cannot cold turkey if you're an alcoholic, okay, because alcohol, things are too calm, it calms you down, okay. But when you have excess, when you become alcoholic and quit all of a sudden, okay, you might have seizure, because again, it's too calming. When alcohol calms the excitatory neurons, and then all of a sudden, it go crazy too much, and then you have seizure and you could die. Sodium and potassium regulation. Okay, aldosterone released from the adrenal cortex. Okay, sodium is reabsorbed and potassium is secreted according to aldosterone. Remember when we did the kidney section? Whenever sodium is absorbed, kidney is then excreted. Okay. Aldosterone increase sodium, increase potassium, decrease sodium, or decrease blood pressure, and aldosterone is released. Angiotensin 2 influences because it stimulates the release of aldosterone. We went through all that when we did the kidneys. When your blood pressure is too low, angiotensin is released and converted in the lungs and all that. Okay. Also, natriuretic hormone for sodium increases. That's for sodium reabsorption. Remember, sodium is reabsorbed by the kidney and it is released. Okay. Regulation of calcium and phosphate, parathyroid hormone. Okay. Dihydroxy vitamin D is calcitriol. Okay, and calcitonin. And well, we just talked about it, but talk about it again. Parathyroid hormone, when there's a decreased level of calcium, okay, when your blood calcium is too low, your body needs calcium, it's going to activate osteoclast. Osteoclast will start digging calcium out of the bones, okay, and then it produces calcitriol and then reabsorbs, okay. There's increased phosphate release with parathyroid that must have increased excretion to maintain balance. Calcitonin, remember calcitonin, tone it down. It's too much calcium. Okay, when you have an increase in blood calcium, you activate osteoblast, and it will blast the calcium to the walls of the bones, and it will decrease absorption of the calcium, and it is then excreted by the kidneys. Okay, now we're getting to acid-base balance. Now recall, this is from AP1, okay. Acid, okay, electrolyze the ion in ionize in the water and release hydrogen ions, okay. They're called acids, okay. And substance that combine with hydrogen ion are bases, okay. So of course they balance each other out. Strong acid ionizes more incompletely and release more hydrogen. So the here is very basic, and up here is very acidic. Okay. Remember, each one is 10 times more acidic than the one before. Okay. Guys, remember, this is pH 7, which is neutral. Our blood is a little bit under here, a little bit more basic, okay, not completely at the neutral. Okay. So our body regulates hydrogen ion all the time, because it is, when it's once we pass a little bit of this line, okay, it becomes dangerous. And a lot of times the kidneys will excrete a lot of the hydrogen ion as well. And the blood will balance it out. Protein is one of them. It's a buffer, okay. Regulation of ion concentration, acid-base balance, regulate hydrogen ion. This is important because slight change in the hydrogen ion concentration can alter the rate of enzyme control metabolic reaction. Chemical buffer system is quick but limited. Here we have the protein buffer system. In the plasma, we have hemoglobin and primary intracellular. So in this case, we have NH3, which is ammonia. Okay, you see there's 3 hydrogen on them. Okay, releases hydrogen ion in the base in the presence of excessive base. When there's too much base, this ammonia will release a hydrogen ion to balance the base. Now here, in the presence of COO, which is carbon dioxide, CO2, okay, accepts hydrogen ion in the presence of excessive acid. So here we have a couple of buffering system. The phosphate buffering system. Just remember, it is intracellular and in the plasma, so intracellular. Okay. The bicarbonate buffering system is mostly extracellular and primarily in the interstitial fluid. Okay. So what it does is it will convert a strong acid to a weak acid. Okay. Convert strong base to a weak. So it will convert something very strong to weak. Okay. Here as well, the bicarbonate ion convert a strong acid to a weak acid. The carbonic acid will convert a strong base to a weak base. Okay, just remember, strong will convert to weak. Okay, so these are the 2 buffering system we have and then there's the protein buffering system. So breathing can also regulate your acid and base proportion in your body. Okay, let's say, do you remember when in AP1 we talked